Today on the Roxom Report London, a new ruble-backed stablecoin and digital asset exchange that enables Russian cross-border payments is soaring in popularity. Plus, why technologies are choosing the Bitcoin blockchain over others. And new Trojan spyware you need to be aware of. All that, and we have Susie Violet Ward to give us her takes on today's stories and give us all the news from Bitcoin Prague. Today on the Roxom Report London. Good afternoon and welcome to the Roxom Report. We're coming to you live from the heart of London to give you our takes on the latest and greatest Bitcoin news. Thank you for joining us. Today's guest is one of our resident Bitcoin maxis, Susie Violet Ward, CEO of Bitcoin Policy UK. Susie, how are you doing today?
I love that biggest Bitcoin maxi, yeah.
You're kind of like our resident Bitcoin maxis.
Resident, yeah, sorry, biggest. Maybe I couldn't compare with Walton. Yeah.
That's true. I'm sure there's bigger. But yeah, how are you? How's everything going?
Yeah, really well. BTC Prague was fantastic.
Yes, I would love to deep dive with you about that because it's so cool that you go to so many of these things, and I haven't been to any yet, and I would love to, you're there, if you could share some of the highs and the lessons, just your experience to kind of paint a picture for people that didn't get to make it, and maybe if we can go through the different sessions that you had, because I know that there was a Women of Bitcoin session on Thursday, I think it was, because we briefly spoke to you when you were there. I'm not sure what you got up into on the Friday, and then there was some kind of corporate business event that was on the Saturday.
Yeah, Bitcoin for corporations, yeah.
Perfect, yeah. Would you mind filling us in about some of the lessons you learnt there?
So it's one of Europe's biggest conferences.
Yeah.
And it has people from all around the world that go there to speak. You'll see a lot of familiar names.
Yeah.
It has the usual kind of conference hall with all the different Bitcoin businesses that are coming up, lots of amazing startups. You can see all the innovation that's happening there.
Yeah.
They have talks on the main stage. The keynotes were fantastic. And then you have some side stage talks. I was on one about the benefits of Bitcoin mining.
Okay.
Which is one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
So the people in the audience, they're all different ranges of knowledge, and I think that there is definitely something for everybody there. The Women in Bitcoin event was at the first day, and that was phenomenal. It was run by Christina and Claire, and they did a really, really good job. I'm not a massive fan of events that separate men and women, and I can understand why it wouldn't necessarily why it wouldn't sit well with all people. But when you go and you have a look around these conferences, you can see that there are not enough women in the space. I have my theories as to why that might be, but it's
why do you think?
Okay, crikey. I mean, it could get a little bit controversial. I don't know how.
All right, we don't have to touch on it. Maybe we'll pick it up another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see that there possibly is a need for this
there is,
to make women feel a bit more comfortable coming into this
Absolutely.
space.
There's such a need for it. Now, I was going to meetups for a long time, and then Christina and Claire created Women of Bitcoin. I saw a tangible difference to the amount of women turning up to meetups after they started that initiative. There is absolutely no doubt that it's actually having a really positive effect. And when you go to conferences, you see people that you recognize. You can talk to them. They're not necessarily the wife of somebody that you might know, and it's a little bit awkward. You know these people, and you can actually interact with them, and it feels like we're multiplying now, so when you go there, I think even men want to see more women. I don't think men particularly enjoy going to these things and having
just men there, yeah.
Right, so it's actually making a difference. Also, it's nice to know the kinds of things that they would want to talk about. It might be slightly different.
Right.
It could be less tech focused. Now, I don't want to generalize, because I don't really like being put into a box and said, oh, because you're female, that you will like X, Y, and Z. That annoys me, because I don't think I do fit into a box. But, you can tailor things in a way, for example, financial freedom, and why
Yeah.
that might be important for a woman
Yeah.
over why it might be important for a man. And so the conversations that we were having at the Women of Bitcoin event was about, you're going to say, you're always bringing this up, KYC.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to say because privacy and,
And
security, which is very important for everybody, but
Yes.
specifically for women too. Yeah. I could
Yes.
see why that would be a topic that women would probably want to understand a bit better. But yeah, tell me about the KYC stuff. But yeah, because I you do talk about it.
I do.
Yeah.
Like, no, here we
I
go
mean,
again.
I'm fed up of giving my information everywhere all the time. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're saying it from a security perspective. Like, why should we have to when all of this information is being leaked?
Not just leaked, it doesn't actually stop anything. So they're collecting data on us. They want to know everything about us, but they won't put the measures in place to protect us and our data. And so if at some point we've got Bitcoiners who have bought Bitcoin on an exchange and they've put all of their data into that exchange is holding all of their data, and then that data gets leaked, and Bitcoin is obviously an open source ledger. It's anonymous. That means that you can trace the transactions. You could technically trace it back to an exchange, get someone's data, find out how much Bitcoin they've bought, get their home address. It's just dangerous. And there are actual times when people have, come into physical harm.
Yeah. Was any of when you were having the session, was there anything that came out of it that was like, and so this is a way to move in a more positive direction, or is this, what were some of those takeaways?
So one of the most amazing people that were on the panel was a lady who co-founded Trezor and Satoshi Labs. So Trezor is a cold storage device where you can take your Bitcoin off an exchange, you can hold it in your own self-custody, and it's probably one of the best devices out there. So that lady was there talking about KYC and privacy, and unfortunately I don't have the name of her company, but she does have an initiative where you can go through a checklist and you can go through and say, right, I can do this, this and this to try and keep yourself safe online. Ways that you can clean up your data, how you can be aware of what's out there, what you can do about it once it is out there. So yeah.
So Trezor is her company, so she's the Trezor founder?
No, she co-founder. I don't think, and Satoshi Labs, I don't think that she is anymore. It was just that she was there in the...
Just trying to see if there's a way that we can quickly pull up that checklist so that we can, but maybe Anton, our producer in the cloud, can look into it.
Okay.
That's great. I think it was, I can't remember if I briefly touched on it with you, because we spoke to you for a couple of minutes while you were there, or if it was Christina, but about, like what were some of the security measures for women, or just people in general, keeping yourself and Bitcoin safe? Remember any of those tips?
So getting Bitcoin onto a cold storage device is very important. The most amazing thing about Bitcoin is it's the only asset that you will ever be able to take into your own self-custody, and no one needs to know that you've got it. So if you are a woman or you're in an oppressive part of the world, that's a very key part of the technology. So with regards to how you can keep yourself safe, well, it's difficult because if you want to interact with the current financial system, which most people do, you're always going to have to touch it in some way. But buying peer-to-peer, not going through an exchange, not giving up all of your information, going through platforms like Vexel or Hodl Hodl. There are lots of really good options out there, but you just have to be very mindful of the way that you're buying it, what you're connecting to, how you're touching, what you're putting in.
Yeah. Is her name Akishta?
No.
Sajdiva? Okay. All right, we'll pick that up later.
Alina.
What about the corporation, the sort of business session that you went to?
That was really good, right?
Yeah.
So there was like 210 institutional investors there. So a lot of businesses were coming together. My favourite panel was one with Sam Roberts from Cartwright, and it was about making Bitcoin work for businesses.
Okay.
So the reason why it's really important for businesses is, and I can speak from personal experience, my husband has an osteopathic practice, and after COVID, when inflation went through the roof, people dropped off because they didn't have as much money to spend on healthcare. His rent went up, his expenses went up, it was a viable business that then ended up getting crushed. So you start to think, well, what can I do? Like, how can I plug that gap? And the thing that always ends up suffering, you have to pay your bills first,
Right.
and then you have to save for your tax. And at the end of it, you're just like, but I'm just not bridging that gap. Like, what do you do? So he started taking Bitcoin a couple of years ago. Now he's got about 5 patients that pay him in Bitcoin and all of
Wow.
that. Yeah, it's really cool. Now he puts all of that Bitcoin on his balance sheet, and he saves half of his tax money in Bitcoin. And that is bridging the gap between what he used to earn, the expenses that have gone up, and the gap in between that makes it now, well, with the Bitcoin, it's now making it a viable business.
So can I ask, so that's on the assumption, is that because the price of Bitcoin has gone up? And if it was to suddenly drop, would then that be a problem?
Yes, that is a very good question. So yes, Bitcoin is going up, and that is obviously the most helpful part of putting it on your balance sheet.
Right.
People will say that it's volatile, but you know, the reality is it's less volatile than a tech stock now. And because it's so highly liquid, you can convert it into cash in a heartbeat. You don't have to worry about third parties or waiting for a few days, or you know, because I know that sometimes if you cash in stocks with, say, Hargreaves and Lansdowne, you know, it will take time for the order to go through, and you've got to get it out. You've got to get it, you know, it could be 3 days before you get your money.
Yeah.
So
You've got no control as to the moment that they sell it either. I
no,
noticed.
well, yeah. So sometimes you can put in a bid and you can accept it, but there are a lot of elements that are outside of your control. Yes, absolutely. So if it wasn't so highly liquid, and it wasn't the best performing asset of the decade, and if the 60-40 portfolio hadn't been dead or isn't dead, and you know, it's the one solid, pristine asset that institutions are now coming into at such a fast pace.
Oh yeah, unbelievable. Just like in the last few weeks, it seems like.
It's just taking, but that's well, they do say in Bitcoin, like, what is it? I can't even remember.
Is it something like when it raises
gradually and suddenly, and suddenly. So it is very much like that. Yeah.
So were a lot of the institutional investors at this particular event, were they kind of trying to understand how it could? Were they coming from like an educational point of view? Were there a lot of people that were very well versed? Like what? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, and lots of different angles too.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the questions that was on the panel about making Bitcoin work for you is like, what triggers a Bitcoin business to start researching and investing? Like, what is that trigger? And there was a guy, I'm not sure if you're aware of him, called Jack Mallers. He is the CEO of Strike and now has become the CEO of 21 Capital. And he just says quite simply, and I love this: the need to keep your money. What triggers a business? Well, we've had that with my husband's osteopathic practice. You earn the money, you've put the energy in, you want to store your energy, you don't want it to be debased by a currency because your government can't operate in your best interest. And so what triggers a business to look into it? Wanting to keep your money.
Yeah. Would you tell us about the panel that you did about Bitcoin mining?
So that was great. Yes, we were talking about like the benefits, how you can tap into stranded energy, how Bitcoin can actually be playing the game with the whole ESG narrative. It can be carbon negative. So anything that you can mine from landfill, methane. Methane has 80 times more the warming properties of CO2. So, for example, with landfills, they flare the methane because it creates a less dangerous gas. But they're still releasing that gas into the atmosphere. It's just less bad than methane. But now they've got the technology used in Bitcoin mining. You can capture that, turn it into electricity. Not only are you solving a problem, but you're also creating a new revenue stream.
That's very interesting. Have you ever dabbled in mining?
Of course. So
Okay, yeah.
So
And sorry, just because I don't fully, I mean, I get the basics of it, but like I don't know practically how it would work. Can just a average Joe start Bitcoin mining now, or
Yes.
is it okay?
yeah.
Cool.
So you can do anything. You could do it with a little nerd miner that's like this big. I mean, the hash rate's nothing. The chances of you ever mining a block are, but it's a really good tool to start.
Right.
And then you could go up to a bitaxe, which is a nerd miner's that. A bitaxe is that.
Wait, and this is a piece of equipment?
It's a little piece of equipment
Okay.
that just but not as high power as obviously a lot of the big miners. But bitaxe, I mean, it may be small, but you know, it's
Mighty.
and if everyone had a bitaxe, then the decentralization of the network would be incredible. But they've actually individual bitaxes. I think they've found 3 blocks between them.
Okay.
So it's not impossible. It has been done.
Freddie was telling us last week that you guys have got miners into schools to teach kids how to. That's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they take them apart
Yeah.
and they see how they work and they understand that plugging a miner into the wall is a terrible idea because electricity is very, very expensive. To make it work, you want to find stranded and wasted energy.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what are some of the tips? Solar?
Solar's a great one.
Yeah.
So we've got some really great opportunities in the UK that could be using Bitcoin mining that are not. I keep hitting my microphone, sorry. That's
You're
driving me
fine.
mad. I'm so sorry. It's like, stop hitting the microphone. Because gesticulating.
It's
too
all
much.
right.
What was I saying?
The mining, you were talking about different countries somewhere. We were talking about the schools. We were talking about
Taking it apart. It's no good to plug it
Oh,
in.
it's-
solar.
solar.
That's right,
Thank you. Anton in the cloud. Yeah.
So there are businesses that have lots of solar panels and they only use that electricity during the day.
Yeah.
And then at the weekends or in the evenings or early mornings, it's not being used, so it's effectively being wasted. So we've actually got proof of concept where we are using old Bitcoin miners just to prove that it's a thing, and using that excess solar that factory or warehouse would completely disregard.
You got me thinking now. I have a house with a solar system on the roof that is more powerful. That the house makes more power than it needs. So there's like a huge, and then so that gets fed to the grid, and then I get a credit, like a 1-for-1 credit to use it when it's not sunny or when it's nighttime.
Yeah.
But there's still like 1,000 kilowatts excess of power. I'm like, maybe I should start a little mining operation in the garage.
Well, do you know it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And so you can choose to send your energy to the grid,
Yeah.
or you can choose to Bitcoin mine. And I've got a colleague that actually does that, like makes those decisions. People use Bitcoin miners as heaters in their house.
Yeah. Wow.
So 1 kilowatt in is 1 kilowatt out. And if you're not mining Bitcoin, if you're creating heat, then you're actually wasting your money.
Yeah. So did you, in your mining experience, did you mine a lot of Bitcoin?
No.
Okay.
So, they're only tiny little experimental things.
Just so you have a sense of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing that we've got, which is brilliant, is a heat bit.
Okay.
And so that is an actual heater that mines Bitcoin. So
wait, it's a heater, but the heat that is generated makes it a heater, or it is a heater that also mines? Or does the processing of it make it hot and then it's a heater?
yes,
Okay, got it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're using the energy twice, I guess. Or you're using power.
you're using the power once,
Okay.
but it's doing 2 things.
Got it. Yes.
So when you're using the power as a heater, it's just heating. But the same amount of electricity can create that heat, and you can mine Bitcoin at the same time.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think that's going to be the way that we move forward. I think that every house, anything that generates heat in the future will be connected to Bitcoin mining.
Yeah. I mean, why not? And so it doesn't, just to clarify one more thing. So it doesn't use more power
No.
to do the mining and but it's the same output of. Oh, that's kind of a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got any, and that's the beautiful thing. So when you hear all these hyperbolic claims that Bitcoin uses more electricity than a country, or, you know, it's going to use all the electricity in the world by 2030, first of all, it depends what you value putting your energy into, because if you value securing a global peer-to-peer money that can separate money and state, I would say that's a pretty good use of energy. Our current financial system is probably a lot worse, especially with the consumerism that it facilitates. Even
lots of
that
waste and pollution.
right, there's a lot of waste in our system. So if you value Bitcoin as a use of energy and use that as a baseline, and then you understand that plugging it into your home is not the way that you mine. You can't just take electricity from the grid, because the amount that you would earn in Bitcoin
It's not going to be worth it.
absolutely not.
So you
then
have
you start
to be smart about it.
right.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Maybe I'll use my extra kilowatt for some mining.
Yeah, well, I can give you. You should do. You absolutely should.
Well, there's people staying at the house right now, so I can't really sneak in there and.
At some point.
At some point when I get access back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was great. Thank you. We're going to cut to a quick break, and then we'll be back with some news from the world of Bitcoin. We'll see you right back after this quick break.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Okay, I saw it. Welcome back, everyone. Let's get started with the biggest Bitcoin story making news today. It is our top of the block segment. Okay, here it is. Finding it on the prompter. Here we go. On Tuesday, Republican senators released a legislative framework that could form the basis for the most significant crypto regulation to date. Led by Senate Banking Chairman Tim Scott and Senator Cynthia Lummis, the framework aims to bring clarity to a market that's long been stuck in legal grey areas. The proposal would clearly define when a digital asset is a commodity, like gold or oil, or a security, like a stock. That distinction matters because it determines which agency oversees it. The plan would allow crypto exchanges to register with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC, and would limit the role of the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, in policing digital assets. Senators say their goal is to protect consumers without holding back innovation. Senator Thom Tillis said the principles aim to provide legal certainty while encouraging responsible development of new technology. The proposal also includes modern oversight tools, tailored anti-money laundering measures, and a commitment to support innovation and blockchain and digital finance. Senator Lummis stressed that the US is falling behind countries like Singapore and members of the European Union, which already have crypto regulations in place. This framework comes as Congress continues to debate related bills. One of them, the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which would move crypto oversight from the SEC to the FC, it's my dyslexia kicking in here, CFTC, has already passed 2 House committees. On the same day the framework was released, lawmakers held a hearing with executives from Coinbase and other crypto firms to discuss bipartisan proposals. Meanwhile, the policies around crypto are heating up. Senator Adam Schiff introduced a bill this week that would bar presidents and their families from profiting off crypto while in office, following growing concerns about digital asset holdings by high-profile officials. The race to regulate crypto is clearly gaining momentum. Okay, I'm going to have a little chat about this to our guest, Susie Violet Ward. Do you think Bitcoin should be classified as a commodity like gold or a security like stocks, and why?
It's absolutely a commodity. 'Cause
Okay.
nobody really owns it in the same way as a stock.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has to pass something called the Howey test.
The Howey?
Howey.
Howey,
test,
okay.
yeah.
What is that?
I can't remember the exact. You could probably look it up, but
Yeah,
there's 4 criteria, and I can't remember exactly what they are off the top of my head. But Bitcoin definitely fits, and it is definitely a commodity because there's no overarching owner to it. It's completely decentralized in a similar way to how gold is.
Mm-hmm,
I think it's kind of.
So it was a US Supreme Court determination to test whether something qualifies as an investment contract and therefore a security. So investment of money. And wait, just so that I get it. Security is a stock and commodities. Oh God, I have to keep getting that straight in my head.
Yeah, well, if you think that gold and oil are commodities, and then you think that stocks are securities, you can quickly see why crypto would fit into the security because they're VC companies, and why Bitcoin would be a commodity because it's a decentralized protocol.
Okay. What about the argument that if Bitcoin is being used to fund purchases, does it then not become a security because it's a bit more like money?
Is that, I don't think that you can't really use stocks to
Buy yourself.
stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I've got to get my head around this, but it's saying the key elements of the Howey test are investment of money. This involves the contribution of capital, which can include cash or other valuable assets into a venture. So Bitcoin does, you do that. Common enterprise exists where fortunes of the investor are linked to the success of the promoter of other investors.
Right.
So maybe that's a no, right?
So that would be, if it was a yes to that, then it would probably fall into the securities category, I would suggest.
But we're thinking that you see it as a commodity, right?
It is definitely a commodity, yeah.
Right. So I could argue both either way for that one, actually.
That's probably why they've had so much difficulty in trying to get their act together, because
guess.
it's been going on for a long time. And
Yeah.
there have been arguments, and there was a long time when Bitcoin wasn't considered a commodity, and it did fall under the SEC.
Yeah. Expectation of profit. Investors must. I could see this with gold too, though.
Oh yeah.
Solely from efforts of others. The profits must be derived primarily from the managerial or entrepreneurial efforts of the promoter or a third party, rather than the investor's own efforts. Okay, so then that's when we can say no. So then, yeah. This is interesting, actually.
Yeah.
I can see why it is such a grey area and is confusing.
Yeah, but Bitcoin's a commodity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're sticking with it. Even though I'm a bit confused by the test, that's what we're going with. Okay, great. Do you have any thoughts on what department would be better suited to oversee Bitcoin? The Securities and Exchange Commission or the Commodity Futures Trading Commission? And yeah.
Yeah, definitely the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, yeah.
Yeah, a bit more up their alley.
Definitely not the SEC. And they've had their chance, and they've really made a hash of it, so.
Right. Specifically with Bitcoin or with...
Yeah, I think they've probably made a hash of Bitcoin and crypto.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's quite new. You don't know what the incentives are. Trying to get people to understand it in the first place is difficult, and understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto is super tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that it's a learning curve for these guys. Yeah.
It is. It's so unbelievable how slow it is. Like with the internet and like security on the internet, and then like just with everything, it's like let's wait for a year and a half before we start doing anything about it. Like it has to be so much more. Like the advancement and the development, especially with AI, these things are happening so quickly. Like you have to be a little bit more forward focused.
You do, but the problem is the people that are any good won't work on these projects. So for example, you take the FCA and how they don't understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. They've been researching Bitcoin since 2011. Now, from what I understand, every time somebody gets to research Bitcoin at the FCA, they realise how amazing it is, and then they leave to set up their own company. So there's a really high turnover of staff, and anyone who gets it just thinks, this fiat nonsense is not for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to be back after a quick break with the Market Watch.
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to just go straight to the price of Bitcoin and talk about that today as we're running out of time a little bit. So Bitcoin has rebounded from a weekend dip below 100,000, climbing back above 107,000 we're at right now, amid easing geopolitical tensions and sustained institutional demand, showing resilience despite recent volatility. Technical analysis suggests Bitcoin is in the late Wyckoff accumulation phase, with a potential bullish breakout expected soon that could push prices to all-time highs, supported by growing global liquidity. Market sentiment shows increased interest in protective put operations ahead of a $14 billion Bitcoin options expiry, indicating cautious positioning by traders amid ongoing price consolidation around the $106,000 level. Okay, Susie, would love to get your take on this because I feel like you have some good insight into this seasonality you were mentioning about the fluctuations. Yeah, how has June been in your opinion?
It's a bad month. It usually is a bad month. It's usually the second worst month. September is usually pretty terrible.
Interesting.
But it will pick up in July if history repeats itself. Quite often the expression sell in May, go away kind of has an impact in that. But there was something else quite interesting that happened at the weekend. Now, I don't necessarily know if it was linked, but there was, I think, around about a 4.5% drop in hash rate. And I think that it came from Iran and possibly was linked to the bombings.
Interesting. Can you sort of explain that in a little bit for people that might not kind of understand the ins and outs of that? So like, break it down a little bit more. For me, mostly. I was like, for people. For me, yeah.
I love that you ask these questions. They're brilliant.
Yeah, because you're so knowledgeable about it, and I'm still learning. So yeah.
Oh no, I love it. So we suspect that there's a lot of mining that's going on that may not necessarily be known, and that governments are mining Bitcoin quietly.
So you think in Iran?
I think absolutely there's a lot of stuff going on in Iran.
And because of the strikes, maybe that had stopped?
Yes, and they think it's owned by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and it dropped by 15% over the weekend, and it seemed to coincide with...
Interesting. The time of the drop with the strikes.
Possibly.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
Possibly linked. Could be causation, correlation. I don't know.
Don't know for sure,
no
but
one
yeah,
knows,
just an observation. Yeah.
It was just it was an interesting observation.
Coincidence.
Yeah, but I mean, like Bitcoin was 98k on Sunday, and as you say, it's just like it's just shot up. But like we were talking about Bitcoin for corporations, ETFs are buying, treasury companies, like it's all exploding.
Yeah, and like now everybody's just jumping in to buy a dip, so things will rebound quite quickly whenever it does.
And July, I mean, what's the date today? Like
I think we're the 25th.
Right, it's just going to go. I think July's going to be a very good month.
And good versus bad month are most growth. When most growth happens, is a good month as opposed to a little less or a decline.
Yeah, exactly. So June isn't terrible. I think it's roughly dropped by about 0.23%. It's not the end of the world. But when you think about the gains that you expect in Bitcoin and how it could jump. I mean, we had a God candle, this year. I can't remember exactly what month it was. That's $10,000 in a day increase.
That's insane. Yeah, that is insane. Wow. We'll see when the next one of those is.
Yeah, well, they're going to come.
Yeah.
It's the only asset on the planet that has a finite supply. And I don't think a lot of people have quite got their head around that, because everything else that we have you can make more of. Even gold. I mean, it might be slow, it might not come into the system quickly, but there is still more out there.
Yeah. Wow. Any other, well, the last time you were on, it's so hard to make predictions, and I know you said you don't like to make predictions, but
No.
There was the talk like a couple of weeks ago about a rally to 120k, which, I mean,
easy
potential. Yeah.
Easy. That could easily happen in July.
Yeah. So there's typically, is that the month where there's the most gains typically happen, or can it be?
What? I don't know when the most gains happen. I cannot remember exactly which month, but I know that July, it's not always the summer doldrums. July is generally better, but it tails off a little bit in September, and then the last quarter, often leading up to Christmas, can be quite good. Yeah.
And what do you think it is in September that it sort of dips off again?
Really, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like in certain business, September is when everybody comes back after the holidays, and like things start getting more busy with certain businesses. I wonder whether people have had who have been off for the summer, investing more in Bitcoin, and then they're kind of getting back into the routine of stuff. Yeah, who knows? I'm always fascinated
and
by
it
what.
can always change.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
because of what's happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen in the future. And not every single month is good or bad.
Yeah.
It's just an average over each
pattern.
year.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And I think that it's not going to be the same. A lot of people are kind of waiting for a big crash, but I don't see that happening in the way that it used to, with all the momentum and all the change that has been going on over the last few months. Yeah, I mean, I think so many people are desperate now and have that FOMO mentality of wanting to get into Bitcoin, that even if there was a massive crash, everybody would want to buy in at that point, and things would rebound pretty quickly. So I don't think we're going to see major crashes.
It always rebounds quickly. I mean, like 98K on Sunday, and like you say,
it was up again by the Sunday afternoon or the evening.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more story, one of our Global Gist stories. All right, let's find that one. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. So a new Russian-linked cryptocurrency has quietly moved over $9 billion in just 4 months. It's called A7A5. It's a digital coin that's tied to the Russian ruble and was launched earlier this year in Kyrgyzstan, a small country just south of Kazakhstan. The coin is run by a company called A7, which is mostly owned by Ilan Sor. He's a Moldovan businessman who fled corruption charges and is now living in Russia. A7A5 is backed by money held at a Russian bank that's currently under Western sanctions. Those sanctions were meant to cut off Russia from global banking, but this new coin may be helping Russia work around those limits. According to data from the blockchain, the digital record of crypto transactions, about $9.3 billion worth of A7A5 has been moved through a Kyrgyz-based exchange called Grinex. That's a huge amount for a little-known coin. Most of the activity happens on weekdays during Moscow business hours. The transfers are large, regular, and often go through the same wallets. Experts say this looks more like organized business use than personal trading. It's likely that Russian companies are using A7A5 to move rubles into digital form. From there, they can swap it for Tether, another digital coin that's tied to the US dollar. That makes it easy to pay foreign suppliers or get money out of the country without using banks that are blocked by sanctions. Now, some analysts say this could be part of a new shadow payment system, one that helps Russia keep trading even while it's cut off from the Western financial system. Western governments have taken notice. The UK has already imposed sanctions on the A7 group. It's part of a broader push by Russia to create its own financial tools. And with billions moving so quickly, officials are watching closely to see what happens next. Oof. Okay, we've only got a couple minutes. Just wanted to see what you make of this. What are your thoughts?
They were always going to do something like this. Whether you agree with what Russia's doing or not, I don't believe we should be weaponizing money. That's exactly what Bitcoin is there to stop. So in May 2023, I think, I used to have a column called My Two Sats, where I'd rant about how broken the world was and how Bitcoin could fix it. And I wrote about how BRICS, as a group of countries, would come together and use a basket of commodities to trade with, like their own currency. And so we discussed Bitcoin as a commodity. It just makes sense because that they would use Bitcoin to back something like that A7, A5. It sounds like a gun, doesn't it?
It does actually, yeah.
Yeah, they mean business.
Yeah.
But there'll be ways around it. So sanctions, I just don't think they're going to work. Bitcoin, it's open source, you can verify it. So if you're going to back something by commodities, if you're going to have Russia, who has oil as a commodity, and you have, say, China that has gold, they've got to trust each other that Russia has the oil or that China has the gold. But if you've got an open source ledger that is verifiable, that trust doesn't need to be there. So for me, them using Bitcoin at some point, it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah. And that's an interesting, I like that philosophy about like not wanting to impose sanctions, like financial sanctions, in situations of like what other ways do you think countries should, punish or hold their ground? Are there any other ways around that you think? Because I'm not really sure what else sort of the West could have done there?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I personally wouldn't want to impose my morals and thoughts onto another country necessarily. I just don't believe in weaponizing money. Bitcoin is for anybody.
Yeah.
Your enemies too.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're going to have something that is open source, censorship resistant, global, borderless, then you just have to accept that, you know, sometimes it might get used by people that you don't like.
What about, I know, because we kind of touched on it like on an earlier episode, for crime, like it can be used to pay for illicit activity, awful things. Do you think that they're, like, what are your thoughts with that? And like, should there be some way of intervening to stop it, or are you like, nope, anybody should be able to kind of pay for anything whenever they want, whatever it is?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and I would say that 3 to 5% of global GDP in the current financial system is currently used for illicit activities. If you check Chainalysis and you believe in their statistics and on-chain analytics, which, you know, I'll use it just because it serves my purpose at the moment, but it says 0.14% is used for illicit activities. They have introduced something that called the FATF travel rule, where they want to collect KYC data, attach it to a transaction, and they think that that's going to stop illicit activities. They had this rule in TradFi, and it didn't stop anything. The 3 to 5% of global GDP, according to the World Bank, I believe it is, that hasn't changed in decades. So either they don't know, or the things that they're implementing don't make any difference. But what we do know is that only dumb criminals use Bitcoin because it's traceable on an open source ledger. And if you wanted something that you were going to be able, you just wouldn't use Bitcoin. It would be the last thing that we use. That's why all these that's why the UK government has 61,250 Bitcoin, because they seized it from illicit activities. It's very easy.
Yeah.
They left it on an exchange and they were able to take it.
I could talk to you about this for hours, but that's time. It
Yes.
goes so quickly. It was the same with Freddie last week. I could speak to you for hours. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. We're going to hand back over to RoxomTV in the US. Next up, it is The Great Awakening with Nolan. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. for more of the Roxom Report. We'll see you then.